Hey everyone, and welcome to the Reel and Replay channel. This is the third video in this three-part series that I've done with three lures and the rod and reel setups that I use year-round to catch bass. The first two were the shaky head and the crankbait, so if you've not seen those after this video, go watch those. But my biggest thing that I always tell people is if you want to be successful in your career, sports, anything that you're doing hobby-wise, you have to build confidence in what you're doing. And you can't build confidence if you're trying to do 100 different things all at one time. If you've skipped the basic principles, you're going to have a hard time building on some higher skill sets. And it's the same way with bass fishing. For those of you that are new or inexperienced to bass fishing, if you're not catching bass and you're trying to buy 20 different rods and have all these different lures tied on, you're just confusing yourself. So these videos are to help you dial in on three basic setups and the techniques. And if you will practice those 2 to 3 techniques over and over again, you're going to find that you've simplified it, you're not as confused, you build confidence, and then that's going to lead to you catching more bass. So once again, I've covered the shaky head, I've covered the crankbait in 2 previous videos. Now I'm going to talk about the #1 year-round lure, in my opinion, that I have used to catch bass year-round. And I'm not just talking about all types of bass, I'm talking about the biggest bass. This is the lure that I refer to as my BBL, my big bass lure, and it's none other than a jig. So a jig to me is the king of kings when it comes to bass fishing. It's so versatile, it can be used in a lot of different ways. First thing, let's talk about the one that I use probably 95+% of the time. That's going to be a 1/2 ounce football jig with a Rage Crawl trailer on there. So 1/2 ounce football jig, Rage Crawl trailer, and most of the time I lean toward black and blue because here in Kentucky, with a lot of the river systems, a lot of stained, muddy water doesn't get really clear until wintertime, and I'm not fishing a lot of clear water. Now, if the water is clear, I'm going to go to something that is a little more natural, like a green pumpkin. And so, as you can see, I've got a green pumpkin here in the case or in the package that it comes in. These are the ones that I pick up, these Strike King football jigs, and I pick them up at Walmart. They're pretty inexpensive, and they come with 2 trailers already in the package. So, when the water's a little clear, I'll go a little bit more natural, which is just a green pumpkin. And I don't get fancy. 2 color combinations, black and blue most of the time. Stained water, the visibility isn't that great. Black and blue is the one that I go with 95+% of the time. But then if it's clear, if I need something that's more natural, then I'm going to go a little bit more toward this green pumpkin. So you can see 1/2 ounce football jig. That's what I'm using year round. And then in that package, it also comes with the 2 trailers, the 2 Rage Crawl trailers. I just don't, for me, this is what I've used. This is what I have confidence in, and I'm not going to, use something else. Obviously, people have different trailers. They have different football jigs or jigs that they use that they have confidence in. Mine is the football jig with the Rage Crawl trailer. And the Strike King product, I think, is really good for that and that price point. I don't have to buy super expensive jigs because, once again, I'm fishing recreationally. I'm not fishing for money. But this combination has caught me a lot of big bass over the years. And that's the thing about this. It is a big bass lure. It's going to catch the biggest bass. You may not get as many bites as a crankbait or some of the other moving baits, but you are going to catch some bigger bass. With a jig, the rod and reel setup that I'm going to use is I'm going to have a 7'3" medium heavy rod. I like those Pro Qualifier rod and reels by Bass Pro Shops. I like the color. I like the way they feel. They're pretty light. And for the price point, I just think it's hard to beat. You can pick these up in all sorts of different sizes, whereas some of the other rod and reel combinations, you don't get the size measurements that you would like the 7'3", and then the reel combinations, they only have a certain limited gear ratio. But these Bass Pro Shop Pro Qualifier reels, you can find those in all different sorts of reel gear ratios. You can go down to the 5s, the 6s, the 7s, and so it's ideal for me because I like to pair those based on the technique that I'm using. So with this jig, 7'3", medium heavy rod, want enough power to drag that fish out of the cover or the depths that I'm fishing, because it's a deeper type of lure, and I'm most of the time fishing it in some places to when I set the hook, I've got to be able to power that fish out of there. So the reel gear ratio, going with a 6-8 to 1. You could go up to the middle 7s, in my opinion. Some people go with really, they go into the 8s. They go with the faster reel speeds to pick up more line. But in my opinion, I think something in the upper 6s to mid 7s is going to pick up just enough line. But I want some of that low end torque. When I set the hook, I want to be able to start moving that fish out of wherever I've caught it. So that's why I like a 6-8 to 1 gear ratio for this jig setup. The line, I've got 17-pound fluorocarbon line on here. That is pretty much what I use 95+% of the time, just like I have the half-ounce black and blue on there. 17-pound fluorocarbon can bump up to 20-pound fluorocarbon if there's a lot more heavy cover. But I'm not fishing a lot of mats or heavy grass. Just don't have that around here. So the 17-pound fluorocarbon works great, and I want to have a little bit heavier duty line on there because this thing is being thrown in and out of a lot of structure. Can get a lot of nicks on it. So you want something that's going to match the technique. And this is a power technique. So you want a power rod, power reel, and then you want some line that's going to be able to hold up to that power whenever you're setting those violent hook sets and dragging those bigger fish out of the cover, out of the places that they're trying to hide in. So, this right here, once again, is my number one lure. It's my number one year-round lure. 100% of the time I have it tied on. I catch the biggest bass on this lure. It just seems to be like candy to those bigger bass. I may not get, it's not the one that I've caught the most fish on. That would be a crankbait, but I don't catch small fish on this. When I'm going out and just trying to find a big bite, I'm going to pick that jig up and I'm going to fish it for either, most of the day, all the day, just depending on how I feel. But it definitely is the one that I've caught the biggest fish on. And if you're not using it, once again, just like the shaky head, just like the crankbait that I broke down in the other videos, the jig, those are the three lures that, for me are a staple in my bass fishing and catching bass year round. And if you get back to the basics and you practice those, you're going to build a lot of confidence in your fishing, and you're going to find that the simpler you make things, I think, you have a little bit more fun. You're not confused. You're not running around and saying, well, what am I going to do? What am I doing today? I'm not sure. Limit yourself to 3, maybe 2 or 3 setups and techniques, and go out and fish those every single day and give yourself enough time to practice them. And I think you will find that things will slow down and you'll be able to simplify the fishing a little bit, especially if you're having a hard time catching bass and catching them year round. So number one on my list for year round lures, King of Kings in terms of lures, is a jig. So where do we fish this? Well, I fish it just about everywhere that I fish, the other ones. I fish it off of points. I fish it down bluff walls, around structure. I will fish it in ditches. I will fish it, just about anywhere. So, a lot of times, what I'll do is whenever I pull up to a place and I'm fishing, I may start with the crankbait just to get a feel around there. If I get a couple of bites, then I can switch over to something like a jig. But there are some days where I just pick the jig up and I say, hey, this is what I'm going to fish with all day long, just because I feel that the conditions are good for it. So, what you're going to find is if you start fishing a jig and you've never done that before, everything is going to feel like a bite because you're dragging it on the bottom, or you're hopping it on the bottom. You're using your rod to fish it. Over time, you're going to get better at feeling a bite versus it just hitting off of the bottom or structure. That takes a little bit of time. But in the beginning, you're going to think, I'm getting a bite on every single cast because you're feeling it bump and hit off of everything. So, you got to give that a little bit of time to get through. Well, that's just, I'm hitting a rock or I'm hitting a log versus a line went slack, or it's pulling. And that's why you also got to watch your line too. If you see your line starting to run, you see those little ticks in the line. Normally, those are fish versus, just dragging it all around the structure. But it takes some practice. So whenever the thing about this is sometimes I'll make long casts if I'm fishing it off of points, or I'll flip it, and that's another thing. Sometimes you may have to practice that, but for now, if you're not good at flipping, you can practice that on your own. You can watch some videos on how to do that. But if I'm casting it out, I want to let it drop. I want to let that thing settle, and get down there to the bottom. And then the way that I'm going to work that is, more times than not, I'm going to lift the rod tip up, slowly. So I'm going to let it come up and just kind of drop down. It's going to come up and drop down. And I'm just going to drag it back to the boat or to the shoreline or to my kayak, whatever it is. I'm just going to drag it slowly, or hop it slowly up and down. The other way that I can fish this is if I'm on some deep bluff walls or some deeper area, is throw it out there, pitch it out there, flip it out there, let it sink. Once it gets to the bottom, then I can drag it from left to right, or I can drag it from right to left, however I'm set up, and just drag it and keep contact on the bottom. So just using the rod, slowly dragging it across, keeping bottom contact, and then, I reel up the slack, I come back, I reel up the slack, and then I drag it slowly again. It takes some patience to jig fish. It's one of those techniques to where when you start fishing it, you're going to find that it's not something that you work really, really quick and really, really fast. You slow down a little bit more with this, but you get in some places to where you've got some bluff walls, some points, you've got some lay down logs, things of that nature. You can pick this up and come through and flip that through and fish everything really methodically. And, it's something that just works really, really well if you'll slow down and fish and you've got a little bit of patience. Hard to fish it if you don't have those things, because once again, it's not a real fast paced style of fishing, even though you can pitch it in and out of places and work pretty quickly. But that comes with practice, and that comes with people who are a little bit more skilled as they progress through their learning progress and skill sets fishing. So 1/2 ounce football jig, black and blue for me is the color that I prefer. Unless it's clear water, then you go with green pumpkin. The depth zone, a lot of times if it's 8 feet or deeper, that's where I'm going to be fishing this. I can go up a little bit more shallow than that, but if I go up more shallow, let's say I'm under 8 feet of water, or under 6 feet of water, I probably want to go with something a little lighter, maybe like a quarter ounce jig as opposed to a half ounce. But the half ounce um, is a jig that I think is so versatile in, that 8 feet of water out to even, 20 feet of water. So it's very versatile to fish it in some shallow zones, and then also some deeper zones. That's why I go with the half ounce year round. So football jig, number one year round lure. Um, for a reason, because it catches big bass, and the more I fish it, the more I enjoy that style fishing. So I've broken down in these videos 3 different rod and reels, the lures that I use year round to catch bass. Pretty basic stuff. I think with those 3 setups and those 3 techniques, if you're struggling to catch bass, go with those setups. And I think you'll end up finding that once you build some confidence in those, fishing becomes a little bit more fun. And then you can play around with the colors and the weight setups and how you set it up on your own lake, and that just takes some learning to do. So jig number one in my book year round. Tie it on. You'll catch more you'll catch more big bass. You'll come to understand why I refer to it as the BBL if you're not doing that up to this point. So God bless each and every one of you. Appreciate you stopping by. Like, subscribe, do all that good stuff. Go check out the other 2 videos with the shaky head and the crankbait. We'll catch you next time.